Let's start by first creating the login page. Here you see the UI already created on Figma. This is where we're going to start. We'll use the ProtoPie plugin to transfer the layers of our login UI over to ProtoPie. But before we start, we want to make sure on ProtoPie we have a new file open. Now that this is open, we will go back to Figma to our design and look for the ProtoPie plugin. Start by pressing the actions and find the plugin. And we will type in ProtoPie. And you'll see at the top here, ProtoPie. We'll select it. And then we have the window come out. Currently we have some layers selected. Let me select out. And now we want to select the layer that we want to bring in, which is this full frame. We have options between scene and flattened. We'll be selecting scene. Flattened is for a flat image. And once we're ready, we'll click on export. And you will see all the files, all the layers are imported to ProtoPie in the exact way we had them on Figma. Now let me make some little adjustments. And now we're ready to start prototyping. Now to do that, we're going to go to text. We'll have an input option. We'll drag it. We see this placeholder text pop up. And you see this input layer. I want to drag it inside the username so it will fit inside properly. I'm selecting into the layer so I can get the hierarchy where I need to place the input layer inside. So I'm going to be placing it underneath input group. Now just repositioning a little bit. Now I want this input layer to match the text layer that was there. Just by turning the eye on and off, you'll be able to see the difference. So first we will change the text of the placeholder. That is username. Then I want the background color fill to be same as the white background at the back. Now comparing again, you will notice that there's a little bit space between the username. That's the padding. We will uncheck the padding and back in the properties. Now there we go. It's looking exactly the same. Now we want to double check the text layer if it's the same as what we have in the input layer. So we'll select the text layer. In the properties, we'll make it editable. We'll check it is currently enter with 16 size and a specific color with hex code there. I'm going to copy the hex code, go back to the input. I'm going to make sure the font is correct and enter. 16 size is already there, and we want to change the color. That color black is for when we type in the text. That specific color that we copied is for the placeholder that we have pasted. Now let's check it out. Perfect. It's exactly the same. Now let's preview and see how it works. You'll notice that I can actually click into that input layer and actually type some text inside. Now we want to do the same for password. We'll do the same thing, but first I'd like to name my layer, input username. Now I'll duplicate it, and I want to drag it inside this specific password layer. There. Now moving it and readjusting it. Now we change the text, placeholder text to password. Now let's see, it's looking exactly correct. Another change I would like to make here that makes it different from the username input is that this is a password layer. And for that, I want the type to be a text password rather than a standard text. Now let's test and take a look and preview. Typing in username, alex.c, it's showing up as text. Now typing in the password, it's showing up as dots. Perfect. This is the expected result. Now the next thing we need to do is make this login button clickable and take us to the next scene. Now to start that, I'll first select this login button layer, and then I'll add a trigger, tap, and we will select jump, which is to take us to the next scene once we click on it or tap on it. Right now there's no scenes to be showed for selecting because we need to add a new scene. Now that we have created a scene 1, we will imagine this to be the next dashboard of the screen once we log in. Now going back, we can see select scene 1. I'll have it selected slide in from right to left. Now preview. So once we tap on it, it takes us to the next scene. Now that our button is working, we want to be able to check what's in the username and what's in the password. Now to do that, we want to first store these texts into somewhere we can check. And that's where variables comes in. At the bottom left screen, we'll tap and we'll add two variables for this scene. Then we set both of them to default text because we're storing text and numerical value both. If it was number, it would just be number, but with text, we have both numbers and text and any other characters. Now let's rename our variables. Variable 1, we'll name it as username. Variable 2, we'll rename as password. These are the variables that we're going to store the text from the input layers. Now for our first variable, I'll click on use formula and I'll add input layer, input username to be specific, and I'll type in .text. This will take in the text value that we put in from the input layer of username. Similarly, we'll do the same for password. Again, use formula, type in input, get the input layer. Here it says input username 2, but it should be input password. This is because we didn't rename our input layer. We want to make sure we input every layer so we can identify them properly. Now that we have set to input password, you'll notice that it has automatically changed to input password. Now we'll type in .text to indicate we want the text value of that layer. Now I want to bring your attention to this bug icon next to the variable. Once I toggle them on, you'll notice these green variables show up on the screen. Now when I preview and type in, you'll see text that we type in these input layers show up in the green area. This shows that the variables are storing the inputs live. Now we can use these variables for when we press in the login button to create conditional logic to take us to the next scene or show the error message. Now let's go back to the same interaction trigger and create a conditional logic. We'll click on condition. We'll create our first condition. We're going to select the variable username and we want to equal it to a username, let's say alex.c@gmail.com. And we want to create a second condition. This one's for password variable. And let's set the password to abc123. Now only when the variable username is equal to alex.c@gmail.com and password variable is equal to abc123, then only we should be able to log in. So we'll drag the jump inside the condition. We'll type in. And now we log in. It works. Now let's work with the error message. This error we wanted to show up when the username and password are wrong. So first, let's select this layer and rename it to error text. Then we want to bring the opacity to 0 so that it's invisible once we first enter it. Now we'll add a condition that's the opposite of the previous conditions we made. So we'll select username that's not equal to alex.c@gmail.com. Then we'll add the other condition for password variable that is not equal to abc123. Now within this condition, we'll be changing the opacity of the error text back to 100. So we'll select error text and set the opacity to 100. Now let's test it out. Log in. It works. The opacity of the error text is now full. Now let's simulate the Face ID animation. The trigger here will be tapping the Login with Face ID button. In response, the Lottie animation right above the iPhone screen is going to come down over in this location. Let's start by going to the trigger layer, the Login with Face ID button. Then we'll add a trigger. Tap. Let's rename this trigger Tap Face ID. Let's rename the other tap trigger as well so that we can differentiate between the two of them. Now let's bring in a Lottie animation. We'll go to the media, Lottie, and drag to create a Lottie layer. We can go to the properties and insert the Lottie animation that we want or bring through a URL. I'm going to bring the Lottie file from my original copy of the demo. So I'm just going to right-click copy and bring it over to our current file. And it's already positioned at the top of the iPhone. Now I'll delete the previous Lottie layer. Let's look at the copied Lottie layer. It's a Lottie inside of a group, and you can see that I have installed the local file already in it. Now this group is going to go down once we click on the trigger. So in order to do that, we'll be changing its coordinates value. I'll bring the Lottie layer down to the position where I want it to be. You'll notice that the y-axis coordinates is 0. That's the position that we want to bring the Lottie file down to. Now we'll go to the response of the trigger Tap Face ID. We'll select the response move. We have the container already selected, and we'll move the layer to 0 once the trigger has been tapped. After the Lottie layer has been moved down, we're going to play the Lottie by adding a playback response. We'll select the Lottie file, click the action play. Before that, I want to create another playback of the same response so I can convert that action to seek. I want the time to be set to 0 seconds. So when we play this, Lottie, it will always seek to 0 and play, just in case if you want to go back and repeat the animation. Now I'm just going to rename the two interactions so we can differentiate the two playback interactions. The last response we want to add is going to be the jump response that will take us to the next scene. So scene 1, slide in, right to left. Now let's preview and see the result. We just noticed that the screen changed scene before the Lottie layer even came down. Now to bring your attention to this timeline section next to the interaction layers, they represent the start delay of each interaction. We need to adjust accordingly to get the finesse that we want with our animations. The move and seek is fine, but playing of the Lottie animation, we want to bring it to about 0.3. That's when the movement of the layer has come full down. And then since the video is about 1.5 seconds, I want to bring the jump to about 0.6 seconds. That's after the Lottie animation is fully completed. And also check the reset the selected scenes in case we want to get back to the same scene. We just noticed that the Lottie animation was blocked by the Bezier, so we want to bring that layer a little more down. Also, the jump of the scene happened a little bit too quickly, so let's adjust that. We'll go back to the move, and instead of setting the Y to 0, we'll set it to 60, so it'll come more down. And let's set the play delay a little bit to 0.5, and similarly, we'll set the delay of the jump to 1 second. Let's preview. Perfect. This tutorial is now complete.